Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, the government's revised Environmental Improvement Plan is launched. Will it be better received than the last one? Let's start, though, with winter. Welcome to this season. This week, we're going to look at the farm jobs left for this time of year, when, for some businesses at least, things are a bit quieter. And we're starting with hedge laying. Winter is the traditional time to tackle this. The birds have long finished nesting, and by partly cutting through the trees and shrubs that you lay over to form the hedge, you allow it to rejuvenate in time for next spring. Our reporter Fiona Clampin caught up with hedge layer Stephen McCulloch at work on a hedge in Black Torrington in Devon.
So the first part of the process is cutting the tree just over halfway, maybe 2/3, something like that. And it's a long diagonal cut. We call it a steeping cut down here in Devon, but other people call them pleaching. Now I've put the cut in with the chainsaw, and what I'm going to do is, because this is a big stem, I'm now going to use the axe to open up the split. So the idea is that you want a long, shallow cut so the steeper doesn't split. This hedgerow that I'm laying here, it's currently got berries on. They'll provide food for the mammals and birds that will be visiting this winter. But this hedgerow will also flower and fruit next year. Now I've just got to thin it out a little bit.
And that's a different tool you've got there. What's that?
So now I'm using the bill hook. This is actually my grandfather's bill hook, and this is a Yorkshire pattern hook. There are lots of different pattern of hooks. I just like the Yorkshire pattern one because it's got the two blades on it, which is quite useful.
So you're cutting with the bill hook and you're pushing the tree at the same time to encourage it to come down, yeah?
That's right, yeah.
It reminds me a bit of basket weaving, you know, working with willow, where you're bending the woods to do what you want.
Yeah, to be able to build a strong hedge, what you are looking to do is build it within itself. So cutting pieces off, tucking them in, weaving it in and through, so you've then got a solid structure. And all I'm doing is just working that split all the way down to the bottom, and then just laying that piece into the hedge. It's in the place where I want it, so I'm now going to move on to the next one, and I'm just going to repeat the process.
Why is it essential to do hedge laying work at this time of year?
First of all, you're outside of the bird nesting season, and also the sap isn't running quite so much at this time of year. And also, now the leaves are off, you can actually see what you're doing. You build a much better hedge when the leaves are off. As this is a small piece of hazel, I'm just going to use the bill hook to put the cut in.
Could farmers do this kind of thing themselves come winter time, or is it you're going to say to me they need to call somebody like me?
No, of course they can, and lots of people do lay their own hedges. Sometimes it's a time factor that they can't because they've got lots of other jobs to do on the farm during the winter, of which there are many. So finding somebody else that can come and lay the hedge in for them is also an option, yes.
This is something that you do every year, and you're in a long line of people who've been doing this for centuries.
Hedge laying for me is the best thing that I do in the year, and I really look forward to winter. I'm drawn to it in two ways. The first is the actual skill part, the act of hedge laying, trying to build the best living fence that I can build. But often I'm drawn to thinking about who's steeped these hedges before, how they did it. I also wonder if they're happy with the work that I'm doing. I want the hedge to be in a better state than when I found it, and for the next hedge layer to have all the material exactly where they want it, so their life is a bit easier than mine was. And then I'm just going to knock this crook in to secure the hedge.
Perfect.
How's that?
Hedge layer Stephen McCulloch there in Devon. Now, let's talk about Storm Desmond. You'll probably remember it. It hit the northwest of England in early December 10 years ago and brought record-breaking amounts of heavy rain. A month's worth fell in just 24 hours. That led to flooding. Bridges, roads and livestock were washed away, farmland ruined and thousands of homes inundated. The eventual bill for the damage was put at more than £1 billion. In Glenridding in Cumbria, the flooding led to a project working with farmers, nature and the landscape being born. Its aim, working with the community to try to reduce the vulnerability of the area to future flooding. Ed Hansen from BBC Look North went to find out more.
Originally, this was a very straight ditch that ran from the top of the field right down to the bottom. It rushed water off really, really fast downstream.
My name is Danny Teasdale and I help run Knowles Water Catchment Management.
What we've done by blocking the straight channel and allowing the floodwater to use its original channels again is that it gets to spread, slow a lot more water down up here before it then gets downstream.
Ever since Storm Desmond, Danny, who lives in Glenridding, realised something had to change. With his wife Maddie, they started this community interest company, working with farmers and landowners. And they've been busy. 45 ponds have been dug, over 150,000 trees planted, and 15 rivers restored.
This is a hedge that we planted here about 3 years ago. By doing this on a sort of whole farm scale, working with everywhere, this can help flooding by helping more water infiltrate into the ground. Again, it's another bit, you're slowing a bit more water down again. Great for wildlife, works really well with the farm as well.
For the last 10 years, these projects have been funded by organisations like the Environment Agency and the National Trust. The hope now is local businesses in places like Glenridding will see the benefit and put in some cash too.
They built the flood wall after Storm Desmond, which we've got on the front here.
Andrew Laverick runs an outdoor shop in Glenridding and is a parish councillor.
But I don't think it's ever been tested or challenged as much because of the work they've done upstream. You know, you don't see the water sort of getting as high as it used to. It's in the best interest of all the businesses here to make the village more resilient, and then we hopefully won't have an event like that again.
Over 100 projects have now been completed.
If everybody is doing a small bit on their farm, in their area, that kind of cumulative, bigger effect of it all, that's where you start to have a real impact.
Danny Teasdale there, ending that report from Ed Hansen. And there'll be more coverage on the 10th anniversary of Storm Desmond on BBC Look North all this week, also available on the BBC iPlayer. The government's new environmental improvement plan for England is launched today. The last one was challenged in the courts by Wildlife and Countryside Link, which said it was too vague. In the revised version released today, the Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs sets out what it calls an ambitious roadmap with a clear plan to restore the environment. That encompasses a new plan to stop pollution from forever chemicals, tougher measures on waste crime and more tree planting. They also highlight £500 million worth of funding for the landscape recovery schemes. These are long-term, big-scale projects where landowners work together to improve nature. Wildlife and Countryside Link is a coalition of 94 environmental and wildlife groups. Its chief executive is Richard Benwell.
The last environmental improvement plan was great in many ways. It had lovely lyrical phrases about the wonders of nature, and it had some really bold targets in there, but it was like an epic poem. It went on and on. There were over 600 actions, and those actions weren't properly attributed to delivery bodies or set with timescales. So there was no real way of holding government to account for delivery. There were some big policy gaps in the effort needed actually to halt that decline of biodiversity by 2030.
Is this one any better?
Well, we don't know all the details yet. So we understand that there'll be proper delivery plans associated with the new environmental improvement plan. And that's good news, because with just 5 years to that great target of halting wildlife decline, we need to see action on the ground right now. And on that question of whether this plan will actually prompt action, there are some early indications that there are some new policies in there that will actually help. So it's great to see commitments to tackle the scourge of forever chemicals which are polluting our environment from our rivers to our hilltops. It's great to see promises of more wildlife habitat restoration outside protected sites. So there are some signs that there are going to be some actual substantial policy actions in there too. And for Farming Today listeners, the announcement of a good wodge of budget for landscape recovery is probably good news too.
Now, that is £500 million worth of funding for landscape recovery schemes. Now, they already exist. They are these big long-term projects at large scale where lots of people work together. Is it clear if this is definitely a new 500 million or funding which has already been allocated to these?
I think this is going to be an allocation of the existing farming budget to landscape recovery. So I don't think what we're seeing here is a new wodge of cash that the Treasury has found. I think this is DEFRA saying this is how much of our farming budget we're going to spend on landscape recovery. But we know that those projects can deliver some of the biggest, most exciting benefits for nature at the same time as keeping land in production and at the same time as increasing jobs. But we didn't know until now how much money DEFRA was going to find to support those big projects. The first couple have just got out the door in delivery. Now we need to see DEFRA making sure that the next landscape recovery projects get up and running quickly.
Although that might concern people who were waiting for the announcement on the future of the sustainable farming incentive, which pays farmers on a more farm-by-farm basis for doing good things for nature. Because if a lot of the budget is already being spent on these very big projects, then how much will be left?
Well, we still think that the farming budget is too small. And at Wildlife and Countryside Link, we've been consistently arguing that actually the amount of money that should be in the farming budget is probably double what it is now. It was good, though, that the budget wasn't reduced in the spending review last year, and every part of the scheme is important.
Richard Benwell from Wildlife and Countryside Link. And that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney.